All right, you guys, this is a special live Q&A that is trying to make sense of something that I think everybody is quite shocked over. And I'm very curious, Alicia, to hear what people have to say about yet another massive EE draw. In my live stream yesterday, I told people that no, the likelihood of there being another draw like this is extremely remote. And in fact, Alicia, one individual specifically asked, I have, 470, let's see, 484 points is what he said. Check this out. Actually, it's already started. It's already started. Let's shrink this down here. There we go. Yed Winder. Sorry, I meant 484. That's what he says. I meant 484. So if we go here and we look at our round of invitations, only, hours ago, 2 hours ago, I was in the middle of meeting with a number of clients this morning. Otherwise, I would have gone on faster. But you can see here today, March 23rd, another massive 7,000 invitations issued. And what was the lowest ranked? 484. So I'm going to stop prognosticating, Alicia, because I have no clue what the heck this government's doing. I have absolutely no clue what they're doing. So,
And it's a no program specified draw, right? This is not a PNP. This is not restricted. It's not an FSW only, which was also crazy. It is anybody above 484 as long as you're going to meet that tiebreaker rule. So yes, correct. Some people I see in the chats are saying, well, what's going to happen with the tiebreaker rule? And if you pull that back up again, Mark, we can see what the exact tiebreaker is in
yep,
terms
let's
of
do it.
the time and date of that. But it actually went back to last year. So May
Really? Let me just
19th,
shift
2022.
here. There we go. Nope. Dang, I've got too many screens here. Two recording. Oh, that's why. I'm on the wrong one here, guys. I've got a bunch of things going on here. Too many buttons. So yes, March 23rd, 2023 is the tiebreaker. So
Nope,
basically,
sorry, that was the round. The
sorry, the
tiebreaker is
down.
May.
Sorry, May 19th, 2020. So yeah. So basically, they went all the way back to if anyone who submitted their if you think about this, there are a number of people at 484 that will not receive. They won't receive a nomination when an invitation. Sorry, when they cut it off even like this. Usually there means there's going to be winners and losers at that level. So only people that submitted their profile, entered it into the pool on May 19th at 6:48:41 UTC time or before that will receive an invitation to apply. So technically it's just a fraction of the 484s and then mostly 485 and higher. So that's how it works, just for anyone that is confused about that.
So basically, you had to have your profile in the pool for almost a year, right? Because it's March, and so they went back to May. So anybody who created their profile from March 23rd, 2022 up until May 19th, 2022, those are the people who get to get that ITA at that 484.
Exactly. So Sangini here says, I'm waiting for an ITA at CRS 486. So Sangini, we should maybe be doing, let's see here, a late applause here for you, because at 484, you should be receiving that golden ticket. So
486.
486. Yeah, at 486. So with the round of invitation at 484, you should be receiving it. So congratulations. That's fantastic. That's awesome.
Yeah. And just to clarify, everybody, that tiebreaker rule only applies if you have exactly 484, right?
Yeah.
So anybody who's over 484 is okay. If you're at 485, you're okay, but it's the people at 484 that the tiebreaker rule applies to.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's see. There's a bunch of comments piling in here. So let's see who else we've got here. And we will get to questions in just a little bit. I want to pull up Anastasia. It's great to see you next week. Next week, I'm going to connect with her and her fine spouse. So I'm looking forward to meeting them. And they're here in Lethbridge. So great clients. So I'm excited to connect with them. And let's see what else we have here. Actually, Alicia, with the conference being in Ottawa, Our one clients that have a dairy farm south of Ottawa. I'm actually I think they're about half hour south. I'm going in the day before, so I may very well just drive down and get an Uber or someone to see if I can catch a ride down to visit them on the farm. So
Nice.
I'm looking forward to that, which is another frustration. The whole agri-food program, it's March and it doesn't say it's closed. And so how many people are going to be filing applications only to get them returned because the cap has been met for the year? So we talked about the importance of, just let's prep it up. Let's file it. If it gets returned, then we'll have everything ready to go January 1st of 2024. Fingers crossed. I can't see the program disappearing, but pretty much anything that becomes a pilot becomes a permanent program. But we'll see. We'll see how this all plays out. Okay, let's see what else we have here. We've got Kamlesh. Good to see you. We've got Radhika, who's over in Richmond Hill. Nice work. Well, nice work to you too, our friend here. Okay, and then we've got a bunch of questions. Yadwinder, do we have enough healthcare infrastructure to support these numbers? Well, I can't answer that, Yadwinder. I'm assuming yes, we do. But yeah, maybe that's something you could ask this guy right here. Let's see. Does he have any insight for us? How about, and I think we're more concerned, even more so than healthcare, we're more concerned about housing. I think that's the real question is there houses enough? I'm thinking, Alicia, that I'm going to probably just wrap up the firm and start a construction company instead. It will be far less hassle and hire people to build residential homes. I think that's where
But
that's
you
where
can't
the
find
market's
them,
going
Mark.
to be.
This is the problem. You
No,
can't find people to do the work.
You can't, but that's why you have the foreign worker program, Alicia. So I think the government will treat me even better if I'm not a lawyer and just a regular business owner. They'll let me submit incomplete applications. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. All right, so there we go. We've got our, let's see, I got to make sure I'm pulling the right here. There we go. Okay, we're good. Okay, let's see who else we have here. Alpheus says, do you think IRCC could continue with the same volume of draws at 7,000 ITAs on March 31st? What do you think, Alicia? Do you think they would? Come on. I love these questions now. Now, like it's impossible to even guess what the heck they're going to be doing. So what are your thoughts on that?
So all we can really say is, all right, we have the yearly targets, right? We know what figure they're trying to achieve as an overall target for 2023, and they've got a low end, they've got a medium end, and they've got a high end in terms of their economic stream targets. And so we can kind of break that down. And because there was this dearth, this like complete pause on no program specified draws since January, we had 2 months, February, March up until now, where it was only PNPs. And so, yes, that was some of the applicants were getting in under the PNP programs, but it looks like they're now having to make up for some lost time. And so in order to hit the target numbers, they need to pick up the pace a bit. Yeah. And that's my take on it.
Yeah, I agree. Oh my goodness. Look at this insane, crazy person here. David Peters. My goodness, David, what the heck are you doing? So he did a super chat for $200 and he said, let the world know how awesome you are. I'm going to change the Google review. After being a frequent customer, I realize you're not expensive at all. The service you provide is every penny worth it. I really appreciate the help you provided me and my family. Thanks, Mark. So David and I, it took us a couple days to get through some applications for his family, and it was more than he anticipated, and I didn't charge him a whole lot. And that's very kind, David. You did not need to do that in any way, shape, or form. It's been a pleasure to work with you. David works on a farm near down here in southern Alberta where I live, and he's just been an absolute delight, a great client, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that the PR application is going to go through quickly. And so, David, that's very, very kind. And those of you who watched over the last couple of weeks, David jumped on in one of my lives right out by the krells with the cattle where he's feeding them to say hello. So what an exceptional person. This is what makes practicing immigration so much fun. And I guess I won't shut the firm down and start a construction company. So
great. I'm glad to hear that, Mark.
All right. Okay. Thank you, David. That's so kind. Okay. So here, I think we talked a little bit about this, but Manish says, what will happen to processing times? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, theoretically, they know that when they open up these draws, they have to process the applications. And hopefully, they are now staffing up in order to deal with the influx of new applicants that are going to come through. And we'll see. They're rolling out some new measures to try to make sure that there's actual tracking on PR files. They're hopefully going to get a little bit more streamlined with the PR portals. So that's something that's happening too. Like, no, if you can resource things where you don't have officers who are sitting going through paper files anymore, that should speed things up. So the nice thing is, because they've switched some PNP applications and spousal applications and other sorts of sponsorship applications to these new PR portals, and then of course you always have the express entry regular portal happening as it does, then hopefully that's going to reallocate a little bit more time for officers to be able to focus on these digital files and process them more quickly. They are using more digital screening tools, AI, things to group information when they're doing the temporary residence applications. So hopefully with all these things, we will be in better shape going forward.
Yeah. And I just completed an agri-food today, at least going through it with a client. And that pilot program, if anyone who goes through the PR portal now will start to realize that they are making your job a little bit easier. Before they had all the forms dumped in there, and now they're actually pulling out the ones that are specific to the program that you're applying through. So that's been very, very helpful for people. And I have to assume, Alicia, over the last year or so, since the PR portal has been operating, that when people are filing their applications, it's just been a gong show because they have to select their own documents that they need. So I'm really, really happy to see that development. Couple interesting things, interesting comments here. Let me just go back. So, okay. So Ishmael says more clarification about it. Well, okay, here's another thing. And these kind of go together. Asra says, so does the tie-breaking rule not apply for anyone who has got 485 or more score? And that's exactly what it means, right, Alicia? That's exactly what it means. Only those on who have a CRS score of 484 are affected by the tiebreaker rule. And the reason they have to do that is because there are more than 7,000 candidates in the pool if you were to include all of the 484 and up. So if you see an odd number here, sometimes that's an indication that they're just pulling pretty much everyone at that score level. But when it's even, not always, but for the most part, if it's even, usually there's going to be some people that are at that level that are not getting an ITA because of this tiebreaker. And for 484, like we said, anyone who submitted their profile after May 19th at 6:48 UTC time. So if you filed your profile on May 19th of 2022 or later, you will not get an invitation to apply unless there's some kind of a glitch.
Yeah, if you had exactly 484.
If you had exactly 484 CRS points. Yes. Okay. Great question. And you can see, you know, express entry has been in existence for, well, since 2015. So we're over 8 years now. It's hard to believe that. Holy cow. You know, these questions still come up. It's still confusing for people. Okay. I also saw another one that was heartbreaking that I wanted to pull up here from Sam. And this breaks my heart. So Sam says, I was 488 and my birthday was yesterday. So I lost 6 points and is now at 482. Like that just breaks my heart. I don't know. What would be a, no, I don't know. I don't know if that sound effect really does it. If I had maybe crying children, maybe that would be a more appropriate sound effect. But yeah, that's so sad. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Like with massive draws like this, anything is possible. And why should we be surprised, Alicia, with a draw of 27,332 when they did a CEC? And don't even get me started with this. Okay. Don't even get me started. I'm going to ask this character right here. Yes, you've announced, you know, this big grand announcement about an 18-month extension. Once again, that's going to kick in April the 6th. At least the program delivery instructions are going to set out what's required on April the 6th. But what is your plan for the CECs? What is your real plan for international students? This is still highly competitive. And when you're doing no program specified draws, yes, it does potentially open it up for everyone. But a lot of these kids have got, you know, their degree and they've got 1 year of work experience or 2 years of work experience. but their scores are not going to be that high. And so we're waiting. We are absolutely waiting, Minister. So what are your thoughts on that, Alicia?
Yeah, and I mean, to be conservative or to just try to figure out what your best options would be to say, okay, look assuming the government is not going to do anything for these international students other than keep extending these kind of temporary public policy extensions on work permits, it's in everybody's best interest generally to try to maximize their points under express entry, because that's kind of the only known quantity with a few variables about what happens with targeted draws that we're not sure about what's going to happen. But in the meantime, while you're trying to get your work experience, make sure that you're maximizing your points. And if you can learn to speak French, learn to speak French if you can get those extra language points. If you've not maxed out your English points, make sure that you're taking your CELPIP or your IELTS and make sure that you're getting as high of a score as you possibly can. If you are in Canada and you already have some education, and maybe it's possible for you to take courses outside Canada if you're authorized to do that from your home country, maybe you can bump your education up that way and make sure you get an education credential to show that you have actually 2 or more degrees, and that might make the difference for you. So think creatively within the rules, but think about what you can do to maximize your score, because you might be generally on your own and looking eventually to try to get an express entry application approved.
Yeah. I'm going to pull this super up here. Ahmad asks a very, very challenging question here, and I'm going to ring this little triangle, Ahmad, because you really should book a consult for us to examine this carefully. So what he's saying, Alicia, is that he got his ITA March the 15th, so in the last draw, but he had listed his spouse as non-accompanying. So he says, with spouse, I was at 486, so he would have been drawn in this draw. After today's draw, should I decline and wait for the next one? Same time, I'm scared with IRCC unpredictability. What's your thoughts? Well, this is something, there's no way in Hades, Alicia and I are going to give you advice on what to do in these circumstances. But I will set out some different strategies that people should think about. So one of the realities is that the A11.2 assessment requires that when you add a spouse that you have listed as non-accompanying initially to accompanying, they reassess everything. And so if they were to reassess with your spouse, if you said, look, now I want to add her in, keeping your existing one, or someone who keeps the existing, someone who keeps their existing EAPR application in the queue, they will reassess. And what they're looking to is they're going to say, okay, if we reassess this, will that spouse cause your CRS score to drop below the round in which you were drawn? So you have to understand that what drives the ship for you is March the 15th. And that's really, if you add your spouse, will it drop? So yeah, so it's like, you have to take that into consideration. And I don't think I want to go any further than that, Alicia, other than to tell Ahmad to slide over to our firm and just book a consult where we can sort this out with them. But at this stage, like, you're right, there is no guarantee that IRCC is going to do another big round and you give away a bird that you have in your hand, hoping to, grab the 2 in the bush. That may not be even feasible. It may not happen. So I don't know if you
It's
have
really tricky.
thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, and the whole thing, guys, we go on here and we try to tell you what's happening. We highlight some news in terms of the immigration law and policy world, but we cannot give legal advice through, 2 sentences on little messages. It would not be professional. There is so much more going on in everybody's lives that we need to talk to you about in detail to understand what's really going on before we could actually give you legal advice. And we have to do that through an individual one-on-one consultation and make sure that we get all the relevant information.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let's see. Next one. I wanted to pull another comment up. Let's see here. So Mr. Khan says, any predictions on Bill 19? And this is C19. And this is something, John says, and John brings up a good point here. It is spring, but the minister said target draws will happen later this year. So you can see how the minister is already shifting and pivoting. And this kind of irritates me a little bit, because you guys will remember when he specifically said that the rounds of invitations will be amended. At least they would start do targeting draws in the spring. And if you go over here and we'll just, oh, dang it. me and the minister, we're always like competing for attention for everybody. And then there's me, and I've got to pull up the one. This is the one I want here. Sorry. So if we go here, and I just want to go to our YouTube channel. Igor and I, yesterday, we had a little watch party for the Quet extension announcement. And in that announcement, someone brought up a question that related to these targeted draws. And the minister, yes, this character right here, shifted. Sorry, Alicia. How rude of the minister to just stand right in front of you. The minister shifted, and he hinted very in passing that in the later part of the year, in the second half of the year, they're going to start, right? So he's already shifted from what he said. And my opinion is, minister, just don't say anything. Say, yeah, it could happen, but there's no set timeline. And then just do like you're doing with the draws. It's way more interesting because it just angers people when they have expectations set and then the department under delivers. So it's better to just not say anything. And for the people that were sitting at 484 CRS points, this is a really, really wonderful development for them. And we'll go back here. Oh man, I've got so many different screens. I got too many buttons here, Alicia. Let's go back here. So John's got a point. He said it will happen later this year. So frustrating. So what's the future hold? Alicia, what do you think? What do you think? Once again, with all of this craziness, what do you think that the minister's actually going to do?
Yeah, and I'm less concerned about what the minister's actually going to do than what people should do to prepare for what the minister is going to
Yeah.
do. And I think that's the real question. So as an immigration lawyer, to advise people, look, it's craziness out there right now. If you want a chance at getting an express entry invitation to apply, make sure that your express entry profile is up to date. Make sure you've maximized your points. Keep it up to date. If it's going to expire, go in and make sure that you've screenshotted everything. You know what you put in your previous application. You've got a copy of everything so that you can get your new application live and submitted as soon as you possibly can. So there's no gap. That's really all you can do right now is maximize your points and make sure that your profile is up to date. And when it expires, get it on there the very next day.
Exactly. Manzoor's posting here. Actually, I'll pull up Manzoor. Manzoor's in the Express Entry course. He says, "Hey, Mark, I posted my WES on the masterclass community. I really wished you replied. I could have gotten ITA today." Well, Manzoor, the reality is I think I did reply, actually, but you may have missed it because it was at the end. so yes. All right. Actually, no, I didn't. That's right. Because you posted it after the masterclass, I think yesterday. So hang in there, Manzoor, hang in there. All right. Let's see what we have next. Right. Okay. So here's some other positives. So, Sheeta says my profile was created in July 5th, but I got an ITA. What do I do? July 2022. Okay. I don't know.
So Sheeta, was your CRS over 484? And if it was, that would explain why you have an ITA.
Now, yeah, exactly. So understand the 484, and I think we've probably answered it after these questions were posted. Sangini says, thank you so much. I'm a CEC candidate. Waited for so long for this moment. Well, I'm really happy.
I think to follow or close the loop on Sangini's question, because I think Sangini also said, when will I get the ITA? Because they hadn't possibly received it in the profile yet.
Okay, yeah.
Sometimes it does take a little while, right? So just if you could log in or you don't see anything in your email, be patient. Sometimes it takes apparently up to at least 24 hours. So keep checking and hopefully you should get it.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yadwinder still making comments. Yes, reach out to the Prime Minister, Yadwinder, and ask him those questions, or Minister Fraser. Yeah, that would be a good question. Okay, let's see here. Okay, here's some people that are new. And I love people who are just learning about these programs, just watching, who don't have a huge background in Express Entry. So Alicia, maybe you can answer this question from Luwaluhale Lee. Yes. From N. Hi from South Africa. Is the Express Entry hire for high skills such as a person with a university degree? So I think what they're asking is just eligibility and qualification. Do you need to have a university degree to be able to qualify?
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, there are two stages to this. The first is making sure you're meeting the eligibility cutoff. And so this is the CRS points of 67. And that's just to make sure that you, on the selection grid, have enough points to meet minimum eligibility between your education, your age, your work history, and potentially other family factors, depending on how many people there are in your application. But those are the main basic entry points. If you don't meet those, you can't proceed further. But if you do meet those 67 points, then you can go on to create your express entry profile. And then we're talking about all these numbers, 484 and such. And that has to do with the CRS points, the comprehensive ranking score points. And so you can create a profile and you can only have, I don't know, 75 points, and you're not likely to have an invitation to apply because right now that points cutoff is at 484. However, it's still to your benefit to have that express entry profile active and to hope for an ITA, hope for those crazy draws that scoop almost everybody out of the pool at some point. Granted, that was for people who had Canadian work experience, so it's much harder if you're not in Canada or if you don't have Canadian education or work experience. But because of all this uncertainty, it makes sense to create a profile if you're eligible to do so. And the only kind of caveat to that would be if you're also trying to do a temporary residence application. If you're also trying to come on a study permit or a visitor visa, sometimes officers are going to question what's going on if you have your express entry profile and you're trying to come temporarily. So, in some circumstances, it's important to be careful about how you're explaining what your game plan is.
Perfect. Okay, we've got a bunch of comments that are piling in here. So this Facebook user over in the Express Entry Law private Facebook group says, "Do you think the scores would be decreased to 450?" Any thoughts of it going down that far, Alicia?
I wouldn't say anytime soon, right? If we're at 484 and there were so many people that they basically had to only take a few months, right? So if the cutoff was 484, anybody who had exactly 484, they were only taking people whose profiles were valid from March 23rd, 2022 until May 19th, 2022, right? So March, April, May, right? Basically, there's only a couple months of people who were in the pool that have had profiles at exactly 484 that were getting drawn, which means that if you looked at the whole rest of the year, there'd be many, many others who would be in at that range. And then the good thing is they did back-to-back draws, right? So this is why the CRS has moved down from the last draw last week, was they scooped 7,000 people out last week, they scooped 7,000 people out this week, so now we're at the 484, but that's still quite a ways above that 450 level right now.
Yeah, it is. All right, well, I'll bring it up here, Jag. I'll bring up your comment. And I'm not going to fault you, my friend. I understand how frustrated you are. There's always going to be winners and losers, no matter how the minister chooses to divide the limited number of spots that he has for permanent residence in Canada. And I say limited, even though they're greatly expanding every year. So, so Jag says, this is so frustrating. Now this minister is delaying it again. And I'm assuming he's talking about international grads. Now, one of the things I guess we have to take into consideration here is that they did just go through the process to try to extend more time for people to get more work experience in Canada. And I'll let you guys in on a little, at least in my mind, a little secret. So each time the minister extends the ability for people to continue working, they are increasing their ability to secure more CRS points. Now, the challenge is when you have birthdays. So you think every year, once you get your first year of Canadian work experience, you get that big 35 or 40 point jump. And then after that, it's usually 10 points a year. And but when you have birthdays, it's 5 down. So each year that you work, it goes up 5 points. So your chances increase slightly. Now, for some of you, you may go from 1 year experience to 2, which then also gives you maybe more bonus points under the skill transferability section. But in this case, I will give this fellow a little bit of what's the best word? I guess I'll give him I don't want to say the wrong word here.
Encouragement. How about encouragement to do the right thing?
Well, I'll give him a little bit of a break, I guess, on this. I'll give him a little bit of a break because he really does have difficult decisions that he has to make. And Minister Fraser is not operating alone in this silo with no other factors or direction coming to him. He's not the one that's ultimately even making the decision when it comes to the annual levels plans, or how things are allocated, or how many economic versus family versus, refugee. He's not the only person that makes that decision in isolation. There's an entire cabinet, there's a prime minister, there's a party that's running this country that's making decisions, and all of their lobbying, there's politics involved. Even with the announcement yesterday, they could have tweeted that we're extending the QET visa. They didn't need to do that. They could have tweeted that we were doing an 18-month extension on the work permits for postgrads. But if the party wants to get elected, they have to expound all the good things that are happening and try to get as much positive press as possible, because they've really taken it in the teeth over the last while. The last couple of years, they were stuck in an unfortunate situation of a pandemic hitting, scrambling. And I had the privilege of working with IRCC department heads for a number of years through the pandemic. And they were really good people doing really good things, really trying to make the best of a really crappy situation for everyone. And so I have some empathy, maybe is the best way I could describe it, for the minister and what he's trying to do. But it doesn't mean that we cannot be critical and that we can't criticize when we think the decisions are stupid, or that the decisions are not something that would be in the best interest, and that the decisions are more designed for political reasons than they are for actual benefits to applicants or people in Canada, or making sure you're currying favor with various stakeholders, those kinds of things. And that's always a part of politics. So all of those are balancing, even with the decisions to extend on the QET visa, trying to say, look, this is all the stuff that we're doing to help Ukraine. Well, a lot of people probably feel that there's more Canada should be doing other than just opening up work visas. And maybe even Ukraine itself is saying, what are you doing, Canada? You're stealing all our good people. And when this war is over, we need them to come back and help rebuild, which the minister actually identified. So that may be one of the reasons why, they're just trying to be careful with these PR programs and what they're doing. And by, maybe not choosing favorites, it allows them to keep it open and say, well, hey, we gave an open opportunity to everyone, that has CRS scores above the pass mark. But we know that Bill C-19 is coming. It's already here. His powers are there. It's just when he chooses to use them. So there we go. A little bit of a rant, I guess, not a rant, just my thoughts on it. My thoughts. Okay. Let's see. I think we've got some other supers in here. We better pull up. Let's see what else we've got. Let's see. Vineet, did you, sometimes people do supers and then they don't post their actual comment. Okay. It might be this one, Vineet. Okay. What are you thinking about 482? So lots of people are asking what we think. Are the scores going to continue going down? If someone asked me yesterday, I would have said, no way in heck would there be 484 today. No, I would have thought it would have been next week, another draw, even if around 4,500, maybe 5,000. And it would have been maybe for, 89 or something. But, is it possible, Alicia? Is it possible?
Yeah, and part of the problem too is when there's two back-to-back big draws, then everybody gets excited and they pile in and they put their profiles in. And so now you have more people in the pool. So it is really tricky, right? It's almost like you've got to it's almost like an investment strategy, right? You have to put that profile in as soon as you're eligible and just keep it there and update it if you need to and make sure it's current, but don't be pulling it in and putting it out, taking it out and, messing around too much. Just keep it in there, update it when you need to, try to maximize your points, and the best you can hope for is an ITA.
Yep, exactly. Speaking of an ITA, Profil here will give you a little applause. Now we got people cheering. I have received an ITA and my Canadian bank has issued me the letter of funds. Can I withdraw money from my account after this letter has been issued and while my file is being processed by IRCC? So
if you take a look at the settlement funds requirement, and I'm not entirely sure, Profil, but depends on what your ITA was issued under. And so take a look at the invitation to apply itself. Sometimes the ITA on a no program specified draw is issued under CEC, or sometimes it's issued under FSW. If you are given an ITA under CEC, then you don't have to meet the settlement fund requirement. Yay, good news for you, right? However, if for some reason your ITA was actually issued under federal skilled worker, or if you have other complicating factors, like maybe you had a PNP nomination in there, then you've got to be really careful about settlement funds, and you may indeed have to provide those settlement funds. And if you look at, so the settlement fund dollars per family member, so take a look at your family composition, yourself, spouse, children, anybody else who's dependent on you, but also the instructions on those settlement funds are that you have to have the settlement funds when you submit the application and when that EAPR is actually assessed. So make sure that you are maintaining that settlement fund amount if you are required to prove settlement funds under FSW. You can't just say, here, I have the money on March 23rd, but then I'm going to use it all down to zero. And then when they go to assess that, or they ask you for additional proof of funds, you don't have it. That's a big no-no, and your application is quite likely to get refused for lack of settlement funds.
All right, let's hit a couple others here. Okay, this one's from Sean. He says, on a condition for a valid job offer, which states 1 year of employment after issuance of a permanent resident visa, should it state exactly 1 year after the permanent resident is issued? So do they need to say this person will be employed for only 1 year?
Yeah. So Sean, take a look at, I did a really long article on can I claim job offer points in my express entry application. And so there's an article on our blog, on our website, and basically I go through all the nitty-gritty details of what is going to qualify for arranged employment points. And it might have dropped off onto the second page now, Mark, because
We've got so
we've
many
got
articles
we've
here,
got
you guys.
lots of articles happening. Um, Yeah, so keep going back a little bit further. It's almost there. Um, but you're going to want to take a look and try to figure, there it is. So it's that first one on the top. Yeah. So this article is going to go through what constitutes arranged employment points. Not every job offer is going to get you those 50 bonus points. And a lot of people get this wrong, and they think they might have those 50 points and they really don't. And they get confused about what kinds of Canadian jobs are going to qualify for those arranged employment points. In general, IRCC does not want to see, and also this is complicated if you're doing a PNP application because there's slightly different rules depending on the province in terms of job offers to support a nomination. So be really careful about that. But so I'm not sure if you're asking in the context of arranged employment in general or a PNP application. But in general, immigration wants to see that it's not a term of employment. It's not a term employment where you start on day one and you end at year 3. They generally want to see that it's an indeterminate period of employment, which means you are employed at will. So you've signed a contract with your employer and it doesn't end on a specific date. It's just permanent full-time employment. That's normally what they want to see. And part of the key of making sure you have these arranged employment points is that if they are offering you a letter of support to say that they will continue to employ you, they intend to continue to employ you a year after you get your PR, that's one of the requirements for getting those arranged employment points. And so normally it's not exactly 1 year, but it's some sort of statement from the company that they intend to continue employing you for a year after you get your permanent residence.
All right, let's dive into a few more questions. Okay, this one I'm not sure. Excuse me, Amanchu, if we can answer this one. He says, "Hi, Mark and Alicia. I've received the notification of interest from Ontario, and we see this happen, you guys, in the context of express entry all the time. So I don't know if this. I'm assuming this is probably human capital priority. You know, there's EE component to it. Maybe my ECA is from WES and not from the pharmacy board, essentially the PEBC, as I'm an industrial pharmacist. Will that be okay? So that's the first question. And then also, is Provident Fund accepted as proof of funds? And I'll maybe just touch on that one quick, Alicia. It just has to be liquid funds. You have to be able to show that those funds that you have are accessible and available. And I do not take any chances. If I know that I'm going to get an ITA quickly, and there's any doubt as to whether or not the funds are in an account that would be considered like an RSP or something where it's locked in and you can't get it out, then at that stage, I encourage clients to actually move it over and put it in an account that's liquid funds. But yeah, when it comes to Provident funds and things like that, it's not something, you know, I just don't want to take any chances. But as far as this question about getting a WES, I've seen this. I've seen IRCC refuse to grant professional points when it is not through the PBC, but they still give, a bachelor's level. But what are your thoughts when it comes to this, Alicia?
Yeah, and take a look at the fine print when you look at the CRS grid points breakdown, because that's one of the specific things they say when you're trying to claim a specific professional or master's level course. They do have language around what kind of education credential assessments will be accepted. And Igor actually wrote a really nice article on education credential assessments and which ones are going to, how to go through the different processes, which organizations tend to specialize in which kind of education credential assessments, and kind of lining them up. So that's also a blog article that's on our website.
Yeah, and that one's right here, how to choose an ECA organization. So yes.
And I think he specifically mentions the professional degrees.
Yeah, I think he talks about that as well. Okay, let's jump to a few more here. We've got lots of good questions. Okay, we've asked her what's the expectation for CEC draws, and I'm pulling this up because I'm trying to give you guys on Facebook a shout out who are over on the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. Yes, so what are your thoughts on CEC? Do you think the minister is going to go back to CEC at some point in time, or is he just going to keep using these no program specified draws and, for the rest of eternity?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. It's been insane this last year. Everything has been completely up in the air, right? It seems like things are reopening and then all of a sudden they stop. And then there's a federal skilled worker draw only, which is out of the blue. And then now we have giant draws and now they're back to back and then the timing of them changes. So it is really hard to say.
I'm gonna give you one opportunity here. Listen to this. Okay, now what do you think? Yes? Did that help?
If I wrinkle my nose and
Yeah, exactly.
prognosticate.
Exactly. Yes. All right. Let's do some celebrations here, Alicia. So we've got Paulo here. He says this draw is awesome news. Okay, and we'll give him some applause. Now, I don't think Paulo has yet received an ITA, but we'll give him a shout out because of his positivity. And the good Lord knows there's been enough things to be negative about over the last few years through the pandemic and beyond. There's been positives for some people. There's been negatives, like the one viewer that we pulled the comment up with that was very critical of the minister and very frustrated, and undoubtedly so. But you know what? There's nothing that can replace the attitude that you choose. And so, Paulo, big shout out to you, my friend. He says, I can't wait to get an ITA. Since 2017, okay? Waiting for this moment. Planning and persistence wins, basically. Since 2017, learning with you. Muito obrigado. Obrigado, Paulo. Appreciate that very, very much. And I just wanted to pull that up. That's the kind of stuff that feeds good vibes. And we want good vibes on this channel, don't we? I sometimes can get a little bit dark and cynical, but to understand that there's a lot of people that this is phenomenal news. With the Sierra scores dropping down, they're getting down into a range that's a little bit more closer to, what it was before, although 484 is still really high. And boy, I can imagine a day, well, two years ago, I would have looked at 484 and thought, man, the scores are so high still. And, in the 470s were what we'd become accustomed to, 471, 472. And yeah, so it's trending in the right direction, Paulo, for sure. Okay, this is kind of a funny comment from AB, a frequent viewer. He says, at this point, we can confirm that it's easier to get an answer from our partners, spouses, I'm presuming, on what they'd like to eat. So basically, where do you want to go to get something to eat tonight? That's the bane of my existence with my family, Alicia. No one has an opinion unless I suggest something. Oh, no, we don't want to go there. I'm like, okay, so it's easier, he says, to get that decision from our partners on what they'd like to eat than to predict what's going to be IRCC's next move. And I think that's very accurate. Great, great comment. Okay, more celebration right here. Promise was the winner of a free Express Entry DIY course because she was brave enough to join me on a live stream one evening just spontaneously. And so she says, Mark, I got the ITA today. To think that I was complaining to you that my birthday is next month and my CRS could drop. Thanks for the opportunity. You're very, very welcome. So excited for you. Just wonderful. Okay, here's an interesting, let's shift some gears, Alicia. Jalbz says, I'm just wondering why English language tests expire the same as an ECA. Why do the government have expiry dates on them? And maybe start off with those expiry dates just to remind people.
Mm-hmm. And so the time period that each is valid is different, right? So the language tests are only valid for 2 years, but the education credential assessments are valid for 5 years. So take a look. And the other thing is be careful about the date of the test writing versus the date of the test result. So to be safe, make sure that you are looking at the date that you wrote the test, not the date that you got the test result. But anyways, 5 years for education credential assessments, 2 years for your language test. The reason they expire is because, well, your language ability changes and fluctuates probably fairly significantly over a 2-year period. And so, especially if you've been inside of Canada or anywhere English speaking and you have an extra 2 years of language experience, it's probably to your benefit to go and take another language test because probably, hopefully, your scores will go up in that time.
All right, this one's from Gurjan, and he says, hey, Mark and Alicia. Oh, I get a lot of these ones, Alicia. Will there be any issues if I moved out of the province after getting PR? Express Entry BC PNP, almost 3 months now after getting the COPR.
So here's the thing. It's very important to act with integrity and honesty. And if you have told the BC government, I am intending to live in BC, I have a job offer from a BC employer, or even if you don't have a job offer from a BC employer and you fit one of the other categories, part of that application getting approved was BC believing when you said that you had intention to live in BC. And if you then turn around and it's been 3 months and you've lived in BC and you decide, I'm moving to a different province, the risk is that immigration's going to say, hey, you were not honest in filling out your permanent residence application, and the basis of your permanent residence application was based on something that was basically misrepresentation. And so we're going to take away your permanent residence application. And they could do that at any point, or they could also do it at the time where you go to renew your PR card. So be very, very careful. If you have a valid intent, make sure that you have a valid go at living in the province of BC. Really make an effort. And if you've tried to live there for a year and you really can't make it work, there's no jobs, you can't find housing, whatever it is. I mean, BC is a huge province, right? Make sure that you are doing your utmost to make a go of things. And if after a year you really can't, then you can at least show that you tried.
All right. Next question. This one is from Manish. And Manish says, do you think that they should have a pathway for PhD students after they completed 2 years of study? We're highly skilled and have to wait 4 to 5 years as a student before we can apply for PR. That is a good question, Alicia. Yes, you get extra points for PhD. So you are, Manish, getting a few extra CRS points because of your PhD on the education side. But you're right. You've got way more years of, of schooling when you're going through that process than say someone with a bachelor's. So that balances out a little bit. But, and some provinces do have programs targeting, high level academics. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, and this is where, this is the difference between what can you count for Canadian experience points versus what can you count for foreign work experience points. And so if you happen to be doing a PhD outside of Canada, well, then you could claim that foreign work experience and that can boost up your CRS score. And between your bachelor's degree, or maybe you also have a master's degree, plus your foreign work experience, you might be good. That might be enough to have a high enough CRS without having to actually have completed the PhD. It's trickier if you're trying to do that PhD in Canada, because if you're also working on the side, then that work is not going to count for Canadian high skilled work if you're still under a full-time study permit. So that's the tricky part.
Yeah. All right. We're cruising along here. Wow, we are soaring by. GS says, I'm at 483 and IELTS wrote on the 4th of May, 2021. So May 2023. Okay. What will be the consequences if I get an ITA in the next draw? So we are March 23rd and submit the EAPR before March the 4th of 2023. Is it still valid? So what they're asking is, When does it lock in?
Hmm. And so, yeah, before May 4th, 2023. So it locks in if you happen to get an ITA before your expiry on your language test results. And this is the unknown, right? So we'll have to see
Mhm.
um, whether you can actually make sure that to get that approved and submitted, or EAPR actually submitted before
Yeah.
your deadline.
Exactly. And just to clarify too, just so it locks in on submitting the EAPR. And so when you if you can get it in, right, you get that in as quick as you can. The only thing that's locked in at the ITA stage is birthdays. So those are locked in. But yeah, you the moment you get that ITA, you file the application as soon as possible. It's interesting, Alicia, because I remember years ago, and I told the, you know, I told the person it wasn't, it was an indirect story told to me in a consult that someone had filed their EAPR application with their language test results expiring a month later, and they got their application refused because they said at the time in which they did the, you know, completeness check or whatever it was, however they described it back then in the early days, that the language test result had expired at that stage. And I didn't see it personally, and I said, if that's the case, I believe that's wrong, and I would have challenged it. But when you file that EAPR and you get it in under the wire, and you've got that lock-in date, at least the acknowledgement that's automatically returned when you file your EAPR, then your language test result should be fine. But yeah, under no circumstance do I ever advise a client to wait until the very, very last minute. But in some cases, you know, you have to play the hand that's been dealt.
Yeah, and sorry, good clarification, Mark. Yes, I did not answer that very clearly, but make sure that hopefully all these things align. And if it seems like it's going to be that tight, go and write another language test as
Yes.
soon as you can.
Yes.
Like it's just
Don't
going to be
wait.
safer to
That's the
just book
best.
another appointment, do it right now, get another language test in your back pocket in case all the stars don't align. Like you might not get an ITA and then be able to actually complete your full EAPR before your language test is going to expire May 4th, 2023.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's see here. I'm just going to pull up a couple other supers that have appeared here. So Pratful, he says, based on my previous question, I've received an ITA under the FSWP. I have more funds in my account than the threshold requirement. So will it be okay to withdraw some funds from my account while it is processed? So let's take people back a little bit, Alicia, to the pandemic. Okay. So some people had the APR application submitted and then were languishing for years waiting for their applications to be processed. And they had to dip into their funds to survive. Well, IRCC would send out, at least I saw a few of them, a request for updated proof of funds to show that you still have those. So there's two times where you have to demonstrate it to IRCC that you have those funds. The first time is when you file your EAPR. Well, really, even when you're submitting your profile, you're indicating how much funds you have. Although you don't have to demonstrate evidence at that stage, technically you need to have them at that stage. Otherwise, you're misrepresenting. When you get your ITA and you submit your EAPR, you also have to upload proof of funds at that stage. And then the last time, potentially, unless there's some intervening situation where IRCC wants an update, is when you're landing. So there's like, personally, I feel there's a little bit of wiggle room if people dip in and then replenish it, you know, because it's a part of their regular checking account. But the best, safest advice, well, Alicia usually gives that. So I'll turn it over to Alicia.
The best, safest advice is put that money there, imagine that you cannot touch it, and just leave it there, right? That is the safest thing. But the other thing that I will say, Profil, is sometimes people get a little bit cute and they put all of their assets in one account and they have a whole bunch of debt or loans or car payments or stuff that's coming out of a different account. And you have to be really, really careful there because immigration wants to see that it's not only that you have that money in one account as settlement funds, but that money is also taking into account any of the loans or debt that you may also have. So just be really careful.
Yeah. All right, we've got a couple more minutes here before we wrap up. Okay, Nitin is sitting at 483, already has an OINP invitation. Should I wait for the next draw or should I proceed with submitting the documents? Well, that's an easy one as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, you
I'll
just
ring the bell and tell you to book a consult, but bird in the hand, Alicia, that's my view.
yeah. It's really tough to say. unless we can actually talk to you and understand what your goals are, what your work permit expiry dates are, whether there's risks in your application, whether your passport's expiring. There's a lot of factors at play. But generally, if you've got something that seems like it's going to be a sure thing versus something that's unknown, it depends on your risk tolerance. But if you have it, maybe there's value in pursuing it.
All right. Elise says, what do you do if you don't remember some of your past trips and it's not even mentioned in your new passport? So this is travel history question for express entry.
Mm-hmm. And this is something I get all the time. Every time I work with a client and we're going through their travel history, I say, okay, have you told us about every single trip? And have you disclosed absolutely any visa refusal to any country ever in the past? Because if you get those wrong, you are quite likely to be refused for misrepresentation. Your PR is barred for 5 years and you're inadmissible. And that is the absolute worst. That is the last thing that you want. So it is so important for you to go through and do your best to reconstruct your life. So look through photos, look through your emails, look through your receipts, try to reconstruct when you were taking those trips as best as you possibly can. Put it in a giant spreadsheet. And if you honestly cannot figure it out, then you've got to do a good job of explaining what you did in terms of your efforts to try to figure it out, and then put it in your letter of explanation and be specific about which dates or which periods you're unsure about, because it can affect a number of things in your application. And if an immigration officer looks at this and can't then go and do their background and security check clearances or medical exam checks, then it can affect your application. And they can say, we needed that information to properly do security screening for you.
Yes, exactly. All right. Oh, speaking of OINP, how did the heck did that get in there? What is going on? I thought I had a break this afternoon. I have an onboarding call in like 2 minutes. Then I have 2 consults, 3 consults, then another onboarding, and then another consult, and then express entry. My goodness, I thought, okay. Anyways, so we're busy, you guys. And we're just about ready to wrap up. I see here, there's a couple ones, and I apologize. We'll just do a couple quick little shout outs. Mohammed says, finally got his IT like a dream. Congratulations, Mohammed. Sahil, oh, so sad. He said 484, but missed out because of the tiebreaker. Sorry about that, Sahil. Uzair says, good day. It was CRS 486. Good day it was CRS 46. So Uzair is going to get one. So congratulations to you, my friend. Let's see who else we have here. Satnam says he's got 46. He's waiting. When can he expect? That's going to come pretty quick. So hang on there. Then we've got Sheeta. He says, is Cedric on vacation? When is he returning? I need to file a consult with him. Okay. So if you need to connect with Cedric, he is indeed with his family on vacation right now. He has a little break. If it's super urgent, don't hesitate to book a consult with any of us, and we can give you direction and guidance. And ultimately, if it rests with Cedric and you need an appeal or something along those lines, happy to help. So yeah, you can always book with one of us until Cedric gets back. His calendar will reflect when he's back in the office. Pavneet says, if we enroll in the Express Entry course, can you help for PNP application as well? Okay, so I don't create options for PNP because they change so frequently. It's just not a very good profitable venture. Although with the number of allocations to PNPs, wow, it might just be worthwhile to do that. But with the Express Entry course, you get all support and help. When the nomination comes and then you go back to file Express Entry, it fits perfect within everything involved within the course. But we help people. Like I've got a review right now to do the OINP, and I'm just going to jump on with that client in just a few minutes. Let's see here. We've got someone who's moving from the US to Canada with 503 for their company. Yes, we think that's a fantastic idea. And hey, if you're working in Canada for any company on an employer-specific work permit, highly likely you're going to have options, especially with CRS that high. Let's see here. We've got a shout out to Joe Sepeda. Sorry, good to see you, and nice to connect. And then we'll finish off with Rowena here. This is a good place to end with. She says, hey, Mark, I already engaged a lawyer before I get to know your channel and law firm. So sad. It is so sad. So make sure, you guys, that you let people know what we're doing here and share. Holthe Immigration Law is our law firm. We have a ton of other resources, not only on our website. Alicia and I are are releasing podcast episodes right and left, as well as with the firm, we're doing that as well. And all you have to do to locate the podcast episodes is just to go right to our firm website. And you can see right up here, we've got podcast. And I think one dropped just last night. Yes, business immigration, where most companies go wrong with LMIAs. So that one has been launched. And then you have to check out the Impossible Trivia. And we have another one coming. We've already recorded it. It's not nearly as impossible, but really tough on Canadian history, geography. What else do we have in there? Culture and immigration, of course. So check those out, and all of it can be found on our firm website and the immigration courses. You can see I've got the Express Entry one. Today's the last day, the master classes for the Express Entry course. We're going to be very shortly opening up another master class for study permits and for spousal sponsorship. So please check all of those out. And remember, within our firm, let's see if I can find the page right here. All you need to do is click on Speak to a Lawyer on our Holthe Law page if you're looking for assistance and if you're wondering what people's experiences have been. 4.9 and read the reviews. All right, there we go, you guys. Hopefully this was a good one, and congratulations to all of you amazing 14,000 people who received ITAs in the last 2 weeks. And oh, what are you doing popping in supers here at the last minute? Let's see here. Okay, we'll try to do this last one, Radhika. However, you're under the gun and I'm going to be late for my next consult.
I've got to run too, Mark. I've got a AAIP I've got to do.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, okay, Alicia, I'll let you go and then we'll answer this one quick. Receive my ITA under FSW. In my bank account, I have less funds. I'll be taking gift from my family, so it'll be okay to have the funds required met at the time of submission of EAPR. Possibly, but I recommend that you either subscribe to the course, follow the instructions that I have there, or book a consult and we'll go from there. All right.